Please welcome the founder and president of StoryCorps, David Isay, with AtlanticLIVE's Margaret Lowe.
Hi, Margaret.
First of all, it's wonderful to have you here.
Thank you.
How many people in the audience know NPR's StoryCorps? Good. So you have some pre-baked fans in the audience, which is wonderful. For those who don't know, every Friday morning on NPR's Morning Edition, there is a StoryCorps radio story. And I'd love you to just give us a sense of your mission and what they are and what you try to do.
The important question is how many people don't know what StoryCorps is? Who's lying? Someone's lying. Oh, there we go. Hi. Thank you. You're brave. StoryCorps is a very simple idea. I used to make radio documentaries for public radio and had this crazy idea 13 years ago to start this project. When I did radio documentaries, I did a lot of social justice stuff. I did stuff in prisons and housing developments and homeless shelters. And I saw that when I was interviewing someone that oftentimes they hadn't been kind of asked the questions that we were talking about, like what their dreams were and where they grew up. And it was important and sometimes transformative in their lives to have that experience. So 13 years ago, I decided to try this experiment, which kind of takes documentary and turns it on its head and says that the final product doesn't really matter. The purpose is to get as many people as possible, give as many people as possible the chance to be listened to. So we built a booth in Grand Central Terminal where you can bring anyone who you want to honor by listening to their story. And you come to this booth and you're met by a facilitator who works for StoryCorps, and you go inside a soundproof booth, and for 40 minutes you sit across from someone who matters to you, and you listen and you ask questions, and you know that the microphone gives you the license to talk about things you don't normally get to talk about. Very intense conversations. At the end of 40 minutes, you get a copy of the interview, and another one stays with us and goes to the Library of Congress. And about 250,000 people have participated so far. So it's the largest collection of human voices ever gathered.
It's an incredible story. And you often talk about listening being an act of love. And part of the reason you're here today is because you developed, as part of the StoryCorps series, something called Out Loud, which is to capture the stories of LGBTQ people across the country. And I want to share with the audience one of your segments, which has been beautifully animated, and is the story of a man named Patrick Haggerty, who grew up on a dairy farm in the 1950s, and he began to realize that he was gay. And he went in, many years later, he went into a StoryCorps booth with his daughter, and he told her the story of performing at a school assembly, and his dad shows up, and he didn't expect him. So let's watch.
I'm riding to school with my oldest brother, and on the way to school, I'm putting glitter all over my face. And my brother said, "What in the hell are you doing?" I said, "I'm putting on my costume." He said, "Well, I wouldn't be caught dead wearing that." So he dropped me off at the school, and he called my dad up, and he said, "Dad, I think you better get up there. This is not going to look good." So my dad drove up to the high school. And he had his farmer jeans on, and they had cow crap on him, and he had his clodhopper boots on. And when I saw him coming, I ducked around the hall and hid from him. And it wasn't because of what I was wearing. It was because of what he was wearing. So the assembly goes well, and I'm climbing the car, and I'm riding home with my father. And my father says to me, "I was walking down the hall this morning, and I saw a kid that looked a lot like you ducking around the hall to avoid his dad, but I know it wasn't you because you would never do that to your dad." And I squirmed in my seat, and I finally busted out, and I said, "Well, Dad, did you have to wear your cow crap jeans to my assembly?" And he said, "Look, everybody knows I'm a dairy farmer. This is who I am." And he looked me square in the eye. And then he said, "Now, how about you? When you're a full-grown man, who are you going to go out with at night?" And I said, "I don't know." And he said, "I think you do know. And it's not going to be that McLaughlin girl that's been making goo-goo eyes at you, but you won't even pick up the damn telephone." Now, I'm going to tell you something today, and you might not know what to think of it now, but you're going to remember when you're an adult, don't sneak. Because if you sneak like you did today, it means you think you're doing the wrong thing. And if you run around and spending your whole life thinking that you're doing the wrong thing, then you'll ruin your immortal soul. And out of all the things a father in 1959 could have told his gay son, my father tells me to be proud of myself and not sneak. My reaction at the time was to get out in the hayfield and pretend like I was as much of a man as I could be. And I remember flipping 50-pound bales 3 feet up into the air going, I'm not a queer, what's he talking about? But he knew where I was headed. And he knew that making me feel bad about it anyway was the wrong thing to do. I had the patron saint of dads for sissies. And no, I didn't know it at the time, but I know it now.
The patron saint of dads for sissies. That's beautiful. So you've done a lot of these now.
Thousands of them, yeah.
Yeah. Is there a theme or sort of a story that courses through them that you can describe?
Well, the focus of Out Loud is the stories of people who were alive before Stonewall.
Right.
And there's one of the stories, and this isn't a pre-Stonewall story, but there are many surprising interviews that have happened. I'm thinking of a gentleman who was raised by his dad, and he called them his aunties in the 1980s, and then his dad got AIDS, and he died, and all of his aunties died, and he said that his dad and his aunties taught him how to resist through joy. And I think that's kind of what I've gotten from these interviews. There's a lot of, this is a happy story. There are a lot of not happy stories, but it's the courage and the humor and the humanity that just knocks me to my knees every time.
It does. It does. We have another story, and this
Yes.
I would characterize in some ways also as a good and upbeat or positive story, and it's about Gabe Lopez, who was born a girl but always felt like a boy. And when he was 8, he went into a StoryCorps booth in Tucson, Arizona.
Just this year. Yeah.
Just this year.
Yeah,
So
and we just released this as part of an election time series called Who We Are.
Who we are. So let's meet Gabe.
Do you remember when things really changed for you?
We went to a camp and I met 3 best friends, Luke, Brock, and Cooper. They were all transgender like me, so they all wanted to be boys. Brock taught me how to pee standing up.
And that was huge for you, right?
Yeah. That's why I said we're bros. We know each other.
Do you ever get scared about what it's going to be like to grow up transgender?
I've been wondering if when I'm older, a lot of people will try to hurt me or something. Or
Like if they find out that you were born a girl and they have a problem with it, you think that they might try to hurt you in some way?
Yeah.
Were you ever worried about telling me that you were transgender?
Yes.
Did you ever try to tell me and then change your mind? How many times do you think?
I think like 4 times.
4 times.
I was worried that you liked me as a girl.
Because we used to have a lot of fun. Do we still have fun? So it doesn't really matter if you're a boy or a girl, right?
Yeah.
I didn't know that you were dealing with that on your own. If I'd known, I would have tried a little bit harder to have that conversation with you and maybe start it myself.
Do you worry about me?
I worry about how other people might treat you, and it makes me upset to think about what you might have to go through. You amaze me every day. You can tell me anything, anytime, anywhere, and it won't change how much I love you. I'll always have your back.
Thank you, Mom.
What a mom and what a kid.
Yeah, we had an event a couple of
Do
weeks
you
ago.
remember when things...
Whoops.
She's so good. She wanted to come back
I know.
again.
Well, I have a lot of stories. We could keep you here all night. We did an event a couple of weeks ago, and I met Gabe for the first time, and he was there with his mom. and his grandfather's whole family, they all came from Tucson or wherever it is that they live. And just like his dad, his grandfather, they're working class family, Latino family from Tucson, and his grandfather was just crying with pride and joy at his kids. So, one of the things about StoryCorps in general, and certainly Out Loud, is that for me, it's made me very hopeful about this country and the people in this country, and hopefully what these stories do is kind of shake you on the shoulder, especially at this confusing time, and remind you what's real.
Yeah. So what prompted you to do this?
The Out Loud?
The Out Loud.
Well, I am the proud son of a gay dad, and it's a long story. You want it?
I do. I mean, yeah.
So when I was, my dad was a psychiatrist, and ended up being a civil rights activist, LGBT rights activist. I found out that he was gay just about the same time that I got into radio. I found out by accident. I was 21 years old. And it was hard, and it was a complete surprise. I had absolutely no idea. And he told me, and this was 30 years ago, he told me in one of our kind of early strained conversations, he mentioned the Stonewall riots. And I had just gotten into radio. I had just done my first radio piece and dropped out of medical school to do this. And I was interested, and I went out and did a radio documentary about Stonewall. And it was the microphone giving me the opportunity to talk to people I hadn't talked to before. And I met the most amazing people I'd ever met in my life, people like Sylvia Rivera, who was the Rosa Parks of the gay rights movement, and just these courageous, phenomenal human beings. And it was the first oral history ever of Stonewall, actually. And it was kind of what brought my dad and I together, again, after the kind of shock of finding out that he was gay. And then once I started StoryCorps, we've done a bunch of big special initiatives in StoryCorps, everyone who lost a loved one on 9/11, and an African American initiative. And I talked to my dad a lot about doing an LGBT initiative, especially focused on pre-Stonewall. And I tried to raise money to do it, and I couldn't do it. And my dad died very suddenly. 4 years ago in June. He actually died on the anniversary of Stonewall. And then the next day, I said that if it was going to kill me, we were going to do Out Loud. And Out Loud launched a year later on the anniversary of Stonewall. So, and since then, we've recorded thousands of stories, and we'll keep going.
Oh my! So I want you to go back a little bit.
Sure.
And just talk about. I mean, there was a lot of dynamic in your family when that unfolded. He'd been married to your mom for many years. You had a little brother.
Yeah.
How did it all unfold? I mean, what was the sort of...
You mean how I found out by surprise?
Yeah, I mean...
You don't want to know that story. But this was a very, very different time. You think about... I was thinking about how some of the stories that there was a story we broadcast on NPR in the first Bush administration, which was just I think it was probably a gay grandma and her granddaughter talking to each other. And I got a call from the press secretary at the White House who said, and this is when the Republican White House has listened to NPR, she said, "You have no idea how much this meant to the White House," and ended up inviting StoryCorps, and it was the first time that we did an interview with the president because of that story. And a lot's changed. So, 30 years ago when I found out my dad was gay, it was, my brother said our nuclear family just exploded, which is true. So it wasn't easy. It wasn't easy for my mom. It wasn't easy for my dad, but it was, and I was, I think that, my dad was a psychoanalyst, and you could psychoanalyze this whole thing. And I think that a lot of what StoryCorps does is give you the opportunity to talk about the truth. And I think, I think probably it was damaging to keep a secret from a kid, but they were hard times,
Yeah.
And I think part of what we're doing at StoryCorps, there was a Maya Angelou quote that I saw this morning, which I wrote down, which had said, "History, despite its wrenching pain, can't be unlived, but if faced with courage, need not be lived again." And I think that that's kind of what's happening with Out Loud, that we're going to make sure that the very, very painful and difficult history of LGBT folks in this country is not forgotten.
We're going to meet your dad in a moment, on tape, of course. But before we do, importantly, your dad was really, really important in the psychiatric community. He was a gay rights activist, and he really transformed the way the psychoanalytic world thought about homosexuality. It was believed that it was something to be cured, and your father effectively changed that. Can you just talk about that?
Sure. I mean, it's hard to overemphasize how damaging the psychoanalytic and psychiatric stance on homosexualdy, the damage it did. And when you read there isn't a lot of history pre-Stonewall, but what the psychiatrist said is right up there front and center, and it's bad. And my dad, spent the second half of his life fighting courageously. And I was and am enormously proud of him for what he did.
So,
and he wasn't alone. I mean, there were a lot of people who fought this fight, but he was, he knew how to fight.
So before he died suddenly, right,
Yeah.
4 years ago, as you said, not surprisingly, you took him to the StoryCorps booth, and he had just married, I think, before he died.
No, Gordon, no, he married his husband. He had been with his husband for 30 years.
And
he married him
died.
right before he died, but
Right.
This recording was done probably 8-9 years before he died. And I it's funny because I listened to it the night that he died for the first time. It was 3 a.m, and he died. He was seeing patients on a Friday, and he died the next Wednesday. And I thought that I couldn't believe in StoryCorps any more than I did. But when I'm an old dad, I have young kids, and knowing that this recording was going to be the way that my kids knew this monumental kind of figure in my life, this was going to be how they would meet him. That's when the rubber really hit the road, and I fully understood what was happening with StoryCorps.
So take us into the story we're about to hear, or the conversation we're about to hear.
I think he was a salty kind of guy, and I think he's making fun of his sister at the beginning of this. It's his mom. He's making fun of his sister at other times. So this is him talking about his mom.
Well,
yeah.
So we're actually flashing forward, and he talks about his state of being, which is being how he feels.
Oh, okay,
in life.
all right, okay.
Anyway,
okay.
let's
He's
hit the
talking
tape.
about how. Yes, let's hear.
I think I am happier now than I've ever been in my life. So it's happiness is a continuing process
You think about dying?
all the time.
Are you scared of dying?
No, I think about, I don't want to be infirm. I think about not having good times with Gordon anymore. It's more an absence of that.
What do you think is the most important thing that you've accomplished in your life? What are you proudest of?
Very proud of you kids. I am very proud of the work I've done. And I am proud of being able to turn my life around and make it into a happy and good one. You think I was a good father?
I think you're a good father. You're still a good father.
Beautiful. You look like him. So I want to go to the audience for questions in just a moment, but before we do, doing this series, did you have any epiphanies about your father, yourself, sort of listening to all these people that emerged?
Well, I mean, I think that the epiphanies aren't specific to the LGBT material. It kind of crosses all of the sorts of stories we record at StoryCorps, and and I think that these stories speak to the basic goodness of people. So often, those are just the truths that come out, and the resilience of people. And certainly from these stories, the importance of making sure that everybody is treated with respect and dignity at all times, and the kind of damage that can be done when that's not the case. And the damage is profound.
Good. So let's see if anybody in the audience has any questions.
Yeah, my name is John. I'm struck by the raw emotions that you're exhibiting and the vulnerability you're exhibiting in sharing your own personal story. And I wonder if
Where are you, by the way? I can't.
Right,
It's.
yes.
Oh, there you are.
It's
Okay,
right
it's
out
like
there.
one of those. The speakers are
I'll
surround
stand up.
sound. It's like you're
Sorry,
everywhere.
I'll stand up.
Okay.
So I'll just start over. I'm struck by the raw emotions and the vulnerability you've exhibited in telling your personal story. I wonder if you could speak to how that informs the structure of the program itself in making sure everyone feels safe to share those stories, and how we can allow others to expose that same sort of vulnerability in our own personal lives in sharing their own personal stories individually. I'm thankful for this project because it's allowed me to reframe my life in being more open to learning about others so that others can be vulnerable and share with themselves. So can you just talk about that moment of vulnerability in exposing your personal stories?
Yeah, I mean, I think StoryCorps. I think of it as kind of the opposite of reality TV. Nobody comes to get rich. Nobody comes to get famous. It's just this act of generosity and an act of love. And people want to be heard. All these interviews, when we do surveying of people after they record, the number one reason they come to StoryCorps is so that their interviews will go to the Library of Congress. And it's that sense of being part of history which is important to people. And we saw, I mean, I was shocked, but from the first days of StoryCorps, people were just open. And what happens at StoryCorps is that people talk about it's in a way it's 40 minutes to sum up what's most important in your life, and those important moments are serious. So we've done, again, 250,000 people have participated, and everyone's treated with respect, and probably everyone has cried in the booth recording a story. I should say that last year we released an app, and that makes it possible for you to record a StoryCorps interview anytime, any place. You don't have to come to a booth with a facilitator, and then with one tap, you can upload it to the Library of Congress. And what we're going to do is what we're thinking about doing, and we don't have a name for it yet, and I haven't talked about it before, but we're going to, at the 50th anniversary of Stonewall, which will be in 2.5 years, we're going to ask the whole country that week to interview an elder LGBT person, so that we can theoretically last year we did an experiment with school kids right after we released the app and got 50,000 interviews in one night, and I hope we can do a lot more than that with the great gay listen. Why not, like something like that, and we'd love to have you guys start spreading the word about that. 2.5 years, we'll ask the whole country to come together, honor an elder LGBT person, and in one weekend get that entire history, because there is a lot of history to be gotten, especially in small towns away from the coasts, where there are stories that must be recorded and must be heard, but everywhere.
Great. What a perfect way to end. David Isay, thank you so much.
Thank you.